Today's list is probably the most disturbing one I have ever made. These documentaries are so unsettling that I'm almost sure I will never be able to watch any of them again, especially the number one. All these documentaries reveal human nature. They contain footage of real death, suffering, violence, cruelty, animal abuse, and the darkest sides of human behavior that most people would rather never see. If you are ready, let's start from number 10. Number 10, There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane, 2011. As always, we're starting our list with films that don't contain shocking or graphic footage, but are still deeply disturbing in their own way. There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane is a documentary about one of the most devastating and confusing road tragedies in modern American history. In 2009, Diane Schuler, a seemingly perfect mother, wife, and co-worker, suddenly drove her minivan the wrong way on a busy highway for almost 3 kilometers, ultimately causing a head-on collision that killed 8 people, including herself and several children. Diane's family insists she was perfectly sober, healthy, stable, the kind of person who never drank, never acted strange, never lost control. Yet toxicology reports paint a completely different picture: alcohol, marijuana, and levels that indicate she wasn't just impaired, she was heavily intoxicated. The film tries to understand what really happened in the hours leading up to the crash. Was it a hidden addiction, a medical emergency, a psychological breakdown, or something else entirely? So, why are we starting from this film if there are no disturbing footages or hard psychological pressure? Because sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that feel like they could happen to anyone. This movie shocks you with its normality. You watch it and realize that sometimes even close family members, people you've known your whole life, are capable of living a double life you could never suspect. Honestly, I'd call this film There's Something Wrong with Diane's Family. For example, there's a moment when one family member, smoking on camera, says, "My family doesn't know I smoke," and then vehemently denies that Diane could ever drink. It's like a new level of denial, a kind of self-lie. Her husband, for instance, doesn't seem grateful that at least one child survived, and throws out phrases like, "I never wanted kids." Imagine hearing that as a surviving child. It's almost unbearable. Overall, the documentary shows that the human mind, even of those closest to us, can remain a mystery. Be mindful of your loved ones, and don't deceive yourself, even if facing reality is incredibly painful. This is just the beginning. The further we go, the more disturbing the documentaries will become. So, let's move on to number 9. Number 9. The Bridge, 2006. The film The Bridge, directed by Eric Steele, can rightfully be called the most unusual entry on today's list, but also one of the most uncomfortable and disturbing, leaving a very bitter aftertaste. The entire film revolves around one location: the Golden Gate Bridge. A beautiful, iconic bridge that you've probably seen in movies 100 times, and I even used to collect puzzles with its image when I was a kid. But as it turns out, the bridge is famous not just for its views. It's also one of the most popular places in the world where people decide to what the documentary The Bridge, 2006, is about. After learning about the statistics of deaths on the Golden Gate Bridge, director Eric Steele decided to show this sad reality to people, but without using reconstructions or actors. He wanted to film real life, raw, and unfiltered. By setting up cameras for an entire year, he managed to capture numerous incidents, so all the footage in the film is completely real. Steele also shows witnesses, families who faced these tragedies, and even interviews survivors, giving viewers a deeper insight into why people made such devastating decisions. Despite the controversy surrounding the film, I personally think it's absolutely necessary. More than that, I genuinely believe it may have saved lives. The film makes it painfully clear that life's problems, no matter how unbearable they feel, are always solvable, and that those who attempt to take their own lives immediately regret it. Everyone regrets it midair, in that split second before the fall. Remember, you matter to the people who love you. Many of the problems that feel overwhelming right now will seem much smaller in the near future. I've been through something similar myself, and I can tell you, the best thing you can do is reach out for support. If you ever feel those urges, talk to someone who cares about you and open up. If you have no one to talk to, Call 988 if you're in the USA, or search online for your country's helpline. There are organizations that can help almost anywhere in the world. Remember, life isn't over, and everyone has the right to keep fighting. Never forget that. Number 8. The Gift, 2003. The Gift is a documentary that explores one of the most shocking and little-known phenomena in modern society, conscious HIV infection, also called bug chasing. That's right. Some people actively seek to contract HIV, treating it almost like a gift. The film follows two men who are part of this community. Through interviews, intimate footage, and conversations with activists and experts, the documentary shows us the motivations behind such extreme choices. Loneliness, desire for belonging, psychological trauma, and internalized pain all play a role. At first glance, the people in this film are easy to hate. Chasing a disease they know will kill them, it seems unimaginable. But The Gift goes beyond shock. It shows a group of men living in a shadow culture where homosexuality is still stigmatized globally and government support is nearly non-existent. They are caught in a world of misinformation, fear, and isolation, where getting HIV is treated as a way to belong, to end the constant worry that everyone they meet could be a threat. This documentary isn't about condemnation, it's about context. It reveals how social rejection, poor education, and lack of health care can push people into extreme choices. The men here are not just reckless, they are navigating a dangerous world with few options, and in their community, contracting HIV is seen as a ticket to acceptance. For context, both of the main men in the film died from HIV in 2017. One of them regretted his decision almost immediately, but as you can imagine, there was no way back. This film is heavy. It shows a parallel reality that almost no one in this world has ever seen or even heard about. Some may call these men idiots, others might feel sympathy. Personally, I take away this lesson. Sometimes the desire for acceptance and recognition can push people to extreme actions. Actions that may even cost them their lives. If you've seen this film, I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's a rare documentary, and it's fascinating to see how differently people react. Don't hesitate to share your opinion. I read every comment you share. Number 7. The Act of Killing, 2012. For number 7, I'm placing one of the most powerful documentaries I've ever seen. It hit me to the core because it doesn't sugarcoat anything. It shows the face of evil and the psychology of those who consciously commit horrific acts. I've mentioned this film before in one of my videos, but no serious top list of disturbing documentaries can skip it. The Act of Killing is a 2012 experimental documentary directed by Joshua Oppenheimer, with Christine Sin and an anonymous Indonesian co-directing. The film follows individuals who participated in the Indonesian mass killings of 1965 to 66, where alleged communists and anyone opposing the New Order regime were tortured and killed. Many of the killers became gangsters and remain in power across the country. They are celebrated as local heroes and have convinced themselves of it. They openly boast and celebrate their accomplishments as young men, reminiscing about the days when they could torture and murder without consequence. It's surreal, like stepping into an alternate reality where killers praised for their atrocities. This is not your typical documentary where victims' families are interviewed and perpetrators condemned. Instead, the filmmakers challenge these men to reenact the crimes of their youth in their favorite Hollywood styles, gangster films and musicals most notably. They dress in cheesy makeup and drag, performing the torture methods they once used on real people. You want to laugh at the absurdity, but that thought quickly turns to horror when you remember these are real murderers recounting real acts. I won't spoil the ending, but the final scene is one of the most deeply disturbing and chilling moments ever captured on film. Joshua Oppenheimer's work, and the transformation he achieves with the main executioner, is simply breathtaking. I'm sure many of you have seen this film, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've watched it, share why you think it's worth seeing and your impressions. For me, it's probably the best exploration of the psychology of evil ever filmed. Number 6. Dominion, 2018. I spent a long time thinking about which film on the animal industry to put in this spot. There are actually quite a few documentaries showing what happens behind the closed doors of livestock farming. The well-known and probably most popular Earthlings. the brutal and uncompromising Cowspiracy, 2014. Films about dolphin hunting and slaughter like The Cove, I've done a full review on my channel, you can check it out. Or Blackfish, which explores how animals are kept in marine parks and the industry as a whole. All of these films are incredibly hard to watch. Some people call them Greenpeace propaganda, and I often see that in comments and reviews, but I don't fully agree. Among all these films, one of the most striking and raw is Dominion, 2018. I decided to talk about Dominion because this film shows absolutely everything related to modern animal farming, from chickens and pigs to dogs in China. It's the most comprehensive and the most disturbing film out of all the ones I mentioned above. It's also available on YouTube since it's classified as educational content. The film was shot using hidden cameras, drones, and POV footage, revealing the real lives of animals on farms, in slaughterhouses, and in laboratories around the world. There are no cinematic filters or softening effects, just the raw truth. You see millions of animals suffering, how factory farms operate, and how the industry turns living beings into products. I'm not sure I can go into more detail about what happens to the animals on YouTube without risking a block, but just know that this documentary is extremely disturbing and can impact your lifestyle. I've seen real stories of people becoming vegetarians or passionate animal rights activists after watching Dominion, so be careful if you decide to watch it. Personally, I didn't stop eating meat. I genuinely believe humans are omnivores, and for the proper functioning of our bodies, we need animal protein, or at least fish. However, this film shook my perception of the modern world. I honestly thought things were much more humane. It turns out the reality is far worse than most people imagine. I believe everyone who consumes meat should see this film, to understand where their food comes from and make a conscious choice, to continue eating meat or seek alternatives, so they're not personally complicit in what's shown. You might not agree with my stance. You might be offended if you love meat, or conversely, if you're an animal rights activist. Either way, feel free to share how this film, or any of the others mentioned, affected you. I think there's room here for a very interesting discussion. Number 5. Dying at Grace, 2003. For number 5, we move away from violence and industry and confront something even more intimate and existential: death itself. 5 terminally ill cancer patients allowed director Alan King access to their final months and days inside the Toronto Grace Health Centre. The result is a haunting, yet enormously empathetic, depiction of the reality of death. The film doesn't dramatize or romanticize death. It simply observes. You witness patients struggling with pain, fear, and acceptance, but also moments of reflection, humor, and tenderness with family and caregivers. There is no manipulative music or narration. Everything is presented with quiet respect, leaving the emotional weight entirely on the viewer. Because of this, the film becomes incredibly unsettling, and many people might not be able to watch it all the way through. The documentary is extremely realistic and can stir uncomfortable memories if you face the death of a loved one. There's no music, no narration, just observation of people living out their final days, and that makes the film frightening and uncomfortable to watch. For many, this film lingers long after viewing. It challenges you to reflect on your own life, your relationships, and the way society approaches death and dying. It also emphasizes the importance of compassion, dignity, and presence for those in their final moments. Honestly, for me, this film is quite depressing, and I might personally recommend Time of Death, 2013, if you want a slightly more structured look at end-of-life care. But today, we're discussing the most disturbing documentaries, and I'm confident that for many viewers, Dying at Grace will remain in memory forever. So it absolutely deserves the number 5 spot. Number 4. The Killing of America, 1981. Have you ever heard of the Mondo documentary genre? If not, let me give you a brief introduction. Mondo documentaries originated in the 1960s and 70s, primarily in Italy, with the groundbreaking film Mondo Cane, 1962, by Gualtiero Jacopetti and Franco Prosperi. We will see more about it later. This film set the template for the genre. It combined real footage of bizarre customs, shocking rituals, and unusual human behavior with dramatic narration and music. Its goal was to provoke, disturb, and blur the line between journalism and exploitation. The Killing of America is a prime example of this genre taken to the extreme. Directed by Leonard Schrader and produced by Sheldon Rennan, the film is a brutal, unflinching chronicle of violence in the United States from the 1960s to the early 1980s. It compiles real footage of murders, assassinations, suicides, and civil unrest, interspersed with cultural commentary and shocking statistics about crime rates. By the way, it is fully available on YouTube, so you can watch it within platform. What makes this documentary so disturbing is that it doesn't soften reality. There are no reconstructions or dramatizations. What you see is raw, unedited, and sometimes almost unbearable. Watching it, you can't help but feel the overwhelming sense of societal decay, where violence seems omnipresent, from random street crimes to nationally televised assassinations. The film is not just about graphic content, it's a psychological experience. It forces you to confront the darkest parts of human nature and reflect on how culture, media, and society contribute to a cycle of violence. Some people call it exploitative, while others see it as an essential historical document. Either way, its impact is undeniable. For anyone interested in understanding the roots of modern violence and the shocking extremes of human behavior, The Killing of America is both horrifying and unforgettable, making it a deserved number 4 on this list. Number 3. Africa Addio, 1966. In Africa, there is only one truly wild animal, the human. These words open Africa Addio, directed by Gualtiero Jacopetti and Franco Prosperi. This is Mondo shockumentary at its most extreme, and it immediately grabs you by the throat. Why this film instead of the more famous Mondo Cane, Dog Days? Because, while Mondo Cane was sensational and staged in parts, Africa Addio doesn't hold back. It captures real massacres, executions, genocidal acts, poaching, and the slaughter of animals with almost no interference. The rawness here is unmatched, and yes, you can find it on YouTube. Almost 90% of what is shown in the film is real. The directors of this Mondo shockumentary were even taken to court on accusations that some executions were staged under their direction. However, the charges were never proven and were eventually dropped. The directors themselves have always claimed that they simply filmed what was happening, without interfering. The documentary includes actual footage from the Zanzibar Revolution, showing the roundup and execution of thousands of Arab civilians. People marched at gunpoint, shot, and left in mass graves or scattered across beaches. It also depicts the fight against poachers and the atrocities committed against animals. If witnessing human cruelty toward animals is difficult for you, this film may be too intense. Many scenes are completely unique, captured solely by the director's crew, and cannot be found anywhere else. Politically, the film remains extremely controversial. Some critics argue that Africa Addio promotes a pro-colonialist or biased perspective because it emphasizes the horrors while providing very little context about the long history of exploitation by colonial powers. In some versions, the opening narration even suggests that African nations were abandoned by Europe just when they needed her most, framing independence largely as chaos rather than self-determination. This has led to strong criticism that the film imposes a European viewpoint, portraying Africans as raw, wild, brutal, modern-day savages, rather than offering a nuanced look at decolonization. Many scholars believe this lack of context distorts understanding and can reinforce harmful stereotypes about Africa. This film is extremely difficult to watch. Only approach it if you're truly ready. Even the censored versions on YouTube still show the mass executions of people and other horrors, giving a sense of just how brutal and shocking the events captured in the documentary really were. Number 2. Orozco The Embalmer, 2001. If you think you've seen graphic documentaries before, think again. Orozco The Embalmer is one of the most disturbing films ever put on camera. It follows Don Froilan Orozco, an elderly embalmer working in one of the most dangerous districts of Bogotá, Colombia. A place where death is so constant that bodies arrive day and night without pause. The film shows real victims of murders, accidents, and cartel violence, including children. Many of the bodies are in horrific condition, and Orozco's job is to restore them just enough so the families can say their final goodbye. That is the entire film. For most viewers, this is a 1-minute movie. They turn it off almost immediately. For those who manage to endure it, the film becomes physically uncomfortable to watch because it strips humanity down to something brutally simple. Without consciousness, memory, identity, or soul, we're just flesh. And here is the part that completes the tragedy of this documentary. Orozco, who had embalmed more than 50,000 bodies in his lifetime, died during the production of the film. Years of lifting corpses caused him to develop a hernia he never treated, and the complications eventually killed him. In the final moments of his life, he was prepared on the same table where he had handled countless others, by his own apprentice. It's a haunting reminder that no one escapes death, not even the man who worked with it every single day. Orozco treats the bodies with a kind of mechanical routine, and watching that becomes incredibly hard. I don't know how this process looks in other countries. Maybe it's more humane, maybe not. If you know how this compares to embalming practices in Europe or the US, let me know in the comments. One more warning. This film exists almost entirely for shock value. You will see images that many people will never encounter in their entire lives. Watch carefully, and only if you're truly ready. Number 1. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father, 2008. We finally reached number 1. And after everything you've seen today, genocide, executions, mass killings, corpses, war footage, and unimaginable human cruelty, the question becomes, what could possibly be more disturbing than all of that? The answer is simple: emotion. Real, unapologetic human pain. The kind that hits harder than any shock footage ever could. A Letter to a Son About His Father is a short documentary created by one man, Kurt Kuna, with a single camera. It's a personal memoir, not made for shock value, not made to impress anyone, not made to traumatize the audience. And unlike everything else on this list, it contains no violence, no graphic scenes, and no horror imagery whatsoever. What it does have is something far more difficult. An emotional truth so devastating and so honest that most viewers simply aren't ready for it. Honestly, I cried twice while watching this film, and I'm definitely not the only one. Anyone who has seen it knows exactly what I'm talking about. Since I don't want to spoil the entire experience, here's only the basic setup of the story. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father, is a 2008 American documentary film written, produced, directed, edited, shot, and scored by Kurt Cooney. It tells the story of Coon's close friend Andrew Bagby, who was murdered shortly after ending a relationship with a woman named Shirley Jane Turner. Turner was arrested as the main suspect, and soon after, she announced she was pregnant with Andrew's child, a boy she later named Zachary Turner. The film begins as a personal project. Kurt decides to travel across the country to interview everyone who knew Andrew, friends, colleagues, family members, to create a video letter for the baby who would grow up without ever knowing his father. But very quickly, this simple tribute turns into something darker. As Kurt uncovers more details about the murder, the legal case, and Turner's unstable behavior, the documentary shifts from a memorial into a tense, heartbreaking investigation. The entire film is a mixture of love, grief, rage, confusion, and hope. An emotional roller coaster that feels more painful than any graphic image could ever be. I'm not giving a full description of the story on purpose. I don't want to spoil anything. I genuinely recommend this film to everyone watching my channel. It's available on YouTube, so you won't have trouble finding it. And if you feel that emptiness in your chest after watching, which many people do, I'd also recommend looking up the video about the legacy this documentary left behind. It makes things a little easier, and that one is also on YouTube. I understand that some of you might have expected a different film in the number 1 spot, but this one hit me straight in the gut. I honestly consider it one of the heaviest things I've ever watched. Well then, let's move on to the outro. So, here we are at the end. Just so you know, this top list was originally very different. I even thought about including some bonus films, 4 more extremely disturbing documentaries. But I figured it's better to cover those in another video if you enjoy this one. Maybe this video will get more than the 100 views that the last one did. And if it does, I'd be happy to share another 10 shocking documentaries that hardly anyone has seen. But aside from that, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone supporting this channel. All your comments inspire me and push me not to stop. As I were fired, the recent break from work has given me energy as well. I took almost a month off for the first time in 7 years, and now I'm ready to create and produce more. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do so and hit the bell. I hope to hear your thoughts on this top list, as well as your favorite disturbing documentaries. I read all your comments and try to reply to everyone. I think I've talked enough, so I'll wrap it up here. We're already over 2,000 subscribers, and the next goal is 5K. Take care of yourselves. Love your family and friends. Remember that life is sacred, and that even the darkest times will eventually turn right. Recognize this life as a holy gift and celebrate this chance to be alive and breathing.